Ale, put your phone away, we're on company time. Hello, RoahmMythril here once again, getting back to Mag 3, and it's time for the judge commentary on the last stage we just played. 139th place, creatively named level by T-Money. This stage got a 40.85, with a 3.8 in difficulty, 13.2 in design, 7.6 in fun, 6.2 in creativity, 7.6 in aesthetics, and 8.4 in functionality, with a 5% time penalty. Mick. So, I'm not exactly sure how, but something about this makes me very angry whenever I play it. It could be the general length of the level. It could be the fairly large number of spikes. It could be the annoyingness in assets. It could be the sheer number of fake-out endings and false starts. Or it could just be any combination thereof. Whatever the case, this is not a level I enjoyed, and it's not a level I'm likely to replay anytime soon. To elaborate a little more, one of the prominent frustration factors is in the length. I'm fairly confident this is over 70 screens long for one element, when the average Robot Master stage is 25 screens. A lot of this is owed to the level's penchant for fake-outs. You're led to believe that you're going through a castle to take out Honey Woman, but after that it's suddenly an upside-down pendulum mess that repeats the same exact story beats, just Centaur Man. And then it fakes out again with a Flashman castle, and by the time Flashman's on screen, I just want this to end. The sheer number of spikes does not help. A single misstep can often get you killed, and checkpoints are a bit sporadic. To make matters worse, the level picks some pretty awkward assets. The gimmick side is alright, although trying to manage jewel pendulums in reverse gravity while also trying not to die to those spikes, that's an exercise in frustration, and folks are way better off just abusing Rush Bike here. But the real main issue is with the enemies. Croakers, Chuck Magnets, the flat enemies, Machine Gun Joes, Hellmetal DX. This is just a sample of the enemies chosen here, and they tend to be extremely aggravating. Considering these enemies are so common in the level, it definitely brings down the overall mood. Individually, they might be fine, but all of these together in one super long level, it is really, really unfun. That's honestly my opinion in a nutshell. The level design isn't completely terrible. There's some good stuff beneath the sheer length, sporadic checkpoints, and the number of spikes. However, the asset selection and the way it handles the length just makes it really not fun, and not fun is not good. Shinryu. Aside from a few moments here and there, this is a relatively uneventful level. It doesn't help that it's somewhat lengthy, too. While it might not be as big as some other stages, it goes on for just long enough to be a bit of a slog to play through. The thing is, most of the challenges in each segment aren't necessarily bad. They're just kinda dull. While some of these sections feature decent synergy between the enemies and gimmicks, most of them either end up being too easy or have very slow progression, sometimes both. The upside-down ladder climb found shortly into the second area is the prime example of this. For one, it doesn't even work as intended, since the water jets can't push you into the spikes unless you let go of the ladder for whatever reason. Even if it did work, however, it would essentially just be the same challenge repeated over the course of 3 screens. While the other segments have a bit more variety to them, it wasn't enough to stop me from zoning out a few times while going through this stage. Up until this point, the only other thing I could think to comment on was how the music didn't loop properly. That changed once I reached 2 particular parts, the reverse gravity and jewel swing section, and the high gravity area with fork blocks. Both these segments are a lot more engaging than the rest of the stage, but they also come with their own share of issues. The jewel swing section is somewhat ruined by the Chuck Magnets. Due to their placements, they often end up respawning every time you move the swings from left to right, which can easily catch you off guard while trying to jump to the next platform. Ooh, I'm lucky I don't think I really ran into that problem, but I can see where that would definitely be an issue. The finicky gravity flipping section that follows doesn't really help matters either. As for the high gravity segment, I would have probably enjoyed it a lot more if the fork blocks were assigned better patterns. That row of 3 right before the Pyrobug is incredibly annoying to deal with, to the point where I actually encourage bypassing it completely with Magnet Beam. Yeah, I kinda noticed that as you were scrolling them on, that defined the timing, so I kinda got the idea of scrolling back to get them back off screen, then back on to manipulate the timing. That seems to work, but yeah, it only helps if you notice that's how that works. Because yeah, in the original source, were there any of those fork blocks that were actually set up that way in a horizontally scrolling room? I think they were just in kind of singular rooms as you were scrolling vertically. Which leads me to another question which we'll get back to later. All things considered, I think this stage should have focused more on refining its more unique gimmick combinations, along with probably getting more playtesting. Patchy. Creatively thought out remark. It started out fine, but it got increasingly more infuriating to play through as the amount of death spikes increased, with annoying enemies such as the cannons being so quick to ambush you as you enter their firing range. There needs to be another checkpoint in the middle of the fortress section, probably right at the introduction to the Jewel Man platforms. Honey Woman seems quite a bit more difficult to deal with in this specific arena too. Okay, so yeah, I guess that was something that hit some of the others too. I started getting the hang of it toward the end of luring her to have to jump over you, but it did feel kind of awkward. What's the deal with those flying plate enemies with the faces? Their hitboxes are either very inconsistent, or I just have no idea how to properly deal with them. It's super irritating having to deal with them respawning on screen edges while swinging around the Jewel Man platforms in order to make it through the spikes while being upside down on top of that. Yeah, so if I'm understanding those enemies correctly, chuck magnets I guess they're called, if they're facing outward at the screen, you have to realize that they are very flat enemies. So from the viewpoint of the actual character, they're basically just seeing a vertical line and it's hard to hit them. When you're seeing the vertical line on your end, that means it's facing them directly and thus a more broad target. That's when they can hit them. It's not really communicated all that well. And it being I can only imagine that's a Wonder Swan only enemy, challenger from the future, so not a lot of players are going to have seen that one. So yeah, that was a bit weird of an enemy. Being upside down adds almost nothing to the later portion of the stage, except for maybe making Bubble Man kind of a joke, I guess. I kinda like that it changes how you approach the Joe enemies, where you have to duck through as they swing their weapon, but the problem is you can still get hit sometimes by the wonky hitboxes. Yep, I couldn't just slide through. So many shielded enemies littered throughout, which exist only to pad out the playtime. With how much you're forced to wander around near instant death spikes, that can make it so you have to redo everything at any moment. Not a fan at all. At least this version of Rude Buster isn't bad looping aside. Flashman85. Before submitting a level, please make sure to A. Proofread your text, B. Check that your music loops properly, and C. Give your level a real name. I like the premise of a continual bait and switch, all the different assets, admittedly a few too many, orbiting around a central core of gravity gimmicks, and the creative boss chambers that add new dimensions to familiar fights. The areas with Mega Man 3 Fortress graphics combine enemies and gimmicks in terrific ways, minus the water spouts that only look like they'll push you off the ladder into the spikes. Aside from a handful of tiling oversights, the graphics generally look nice, and the music fits perfectly. I'm disappointed about difficult new challenges being thrown at the player without any warm-up. Good luck with Escaroo, sudden gravity changes, jewel platforms, and falling platforms if you've never encountered them before. More power-ups are essential. Keys should really be unavoidable, and teleporters should drop you off in front of the key door. I'm also not fond of the entire last section. Despite some thoughtful challenges, the level starts to drag at that point, and glitchy simulation is no excuse for lazy-looking tile work. I really don't like the entire section with reverse gravity and jewel platforms. It's a nightmare of stressfully precise jumps and out-of-nowhere enemies. Togahiro would have been much more manageable. Yeah, I think that one you can just hit it whenever. That's the little spiky thing from Skullman stage, I think. Special weapons are a must. 2 new gimmicks are then introduced in close succession with no breather in between. Even just throwing in a few screen transitions would help break up sections like this. The secret path, while very clever, teleports you to an unfamiliar screen where it's unclear whether to go down to your death or up. The highs are very high, but the lows drag everything down. With some editing, this could be a really fun level. And that's the wrong button. Ace Spark. I mean, yeah, lives up to its name, I suppose. And why am I hearing this music in multiple entries at this point? It's from, like, Undertale or Deltarune, right? And it's a nice tune and all, but that looping is terrible. And man, I really didn't enjoy this stage. About the biggest positive I can say about the stage is that a couple of the Robot Master rooms really improved the difficulty of the fights in a contest setting. But man, this stage and its issues come down to its enemy choice and sheer stage length. And sheer checkpoint length too, now I think about it. It all gets a bit much, and the stage severely outlives its welcome. It's long enough that even making use of weapons to bypass the more irritating enemies results in you quickly running out. Lots of shielded enemies that have to be killed so the player can navigate some really awkward platforming segments that involve some very finicky gimmicks. And when an enemy is not shielded, it's arbitrarily hard to hit, such as the enemy from the Wonder Swan game, which combos really nicely with that swing from Jewel Man. And by nicely, I mean, And I already despise the Hell Metals from 5GB. This stage elevates how annoying the little gits are to an art form. A frustrating art form. And that's about it. That's the core issue with the stage. It's not just incredibly difficult, it passes that mark and heads right into well and truly annoying. And whilst I noted the new room layouts are positive, using end-of-stage bosses as mid-bosses arbitrarily extends the stage and feels redundant. I could make notes on individual challenges and why they don't work, but I feel that would also make an already fairly redundant comment even more so at this point. The stage is obnoxious on all counts, and as I said before, I really did not enjoy this. Overall, yeah, length and very durable enemies is the problem here. Which, there were a lot of very durable enemies, and it did really slow things down. I feel like if the minor enemies themselves were a bit more manageable, not so many tanky things, having those bosses, as many bosses as there were, at least might not have felt quite as bad, but when basically every enemy in your path is super tanky and takes a while to get through, it does make the stage feel even longer than it already is. And with 5 bosses, by all means, it is a very lengthy stage. I was honestly afraid I was going to miss a token and have to redo the entire stage. And with the fact that the one I almost missed was the last one, ooh, that would have been painful. I'm just saying. Overall, the stage design isn't too bad, and the challenges are interesting. It is a shame that the water spouts just apparently don't work in the engine as intended for this, that trap didn't quite work. But yeah, even if they did at the end of the day, it would have just been the same challenge over the course of 3 screens. But things like the upside-down Jewel Man platforms, I actually found that kind of interesting. But yes, I can see where the chuck magnets scrolling back on screen would be a major issue with that, especially with how finicky they are to hit. But the jumps themselves, aside from that one, they weren't too terribly bad. But I also just have a lot of experience with the Jewel Man platforms from playing the absolute heck out of that stage, so that probably served me well here. So anyway, the other thing that I was going to bring up, this has nothing specifically to do with this stage, except for the fact that it does happen here just by coincidence, the topic of vertical scrolling. I've seen people mention in other stages that had it, that it made them feel a little bit nauseous or whatever, that it gave them kind of motion sickness. I am curious if there is a reason that it never actually showed up in any of the classic Mega Man games. I think the closest you could get to it would be the elevator sections in Gyro Man stage, but that feels like it's pushing the concept of vertical scrolling. Same for the tower that you destroy in Darkman's Fortress. It technically is vertical scrolling, but in a very loose definition of the phrase. It isn't like smooth scrolling as you climb or whatever that became more prominent in like the like Mega Man 7 had it, 8 had it, things like that. The reason I bring it up is because there were other Capcom games that did feature vertical scrolling, like I seem to remember it being in, I want to say, the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers game. So I wonder why specifically it wasn't in Mega Man, if there was like some sort of engine limitation that kept them from doing that, or what. But anyway, just odd observation on my part, complete non sequitur, I'm just curious. But with that, that's where we're going to call it for now, so thank you very much for watching, I hope you're enjoying the series so far, and I shall see you again next time. Until then, fare thee well.